He says, if we open Congress and we give money to Israel, then I want to give a lot of money to Ukraine. One last bit of money. I don't know how much will go into the holdings of congressmen, but obviously this is the last chance for them to get a lot of money from the circular flow. You might think that's corrupt, but the Americans say, no, no, it's not corrupt if it's part of the marketplace. Republicans have said that they are not going to elect a new speaker until they can get a speaker that refuses to give any more money to President Biden for the Ukraine war. The Republican position, and now apparently half of the party, has agreed that the budget deficit in the United States has grown so large that you can't afford to have a war in Ukraine and at the same time rebuild American economy. President Biden has said the American economy is not as important as the war in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine is a fight for civilization, and that is where all of our effort is going. And there was a standoff, and there was a general belief that if the Biden administration did not agree to stop the war in Ukraine, then the Republicans simply would not agree to a budget increase. The United States runs a budget deficit almost always. That's how governments pump money into the economy, by running budget deficits. And if a government did not run a budget deficit, then the economy would have to rely on commercial banks at high interest rates to provide credit. The only time that occurred in recent history was in the Bill Clinton administration, when he ran a budget surplus, and essentially that really slowed the economy down. Well, the Republicans are now holding the government hostage. Under the American Constitution, the president is not allowed to go to war without congressional approval. Congress has never approved of the war. All of this is a presidential takeover from Congress over the right to go to war. Well, all of a sudden, all of this was thrown into chaos by the war in Israel's war against Hamas, and Hamas's response over the weekend. It's a counterattack on Israel. Well, all of a sudden, the Biden administration says, well, wait a minute, we now want to give more money to Israel. It has to complete the job of clearing away the Palestinian districts. It has to get rid of the Gaza population. It has to reconquer the West Bank, essentially follow the Netanyahu plan of basically what the Ukrainians are doing, ethnic warfare. Israel's foreign minister said that the Palestinians are animals, they're not humans, they're just like the Russian speakers are to the Ukrainians, and they have to be wiped out. The Biden administration wants to provide the money for to support the Israeli attack there. Now, and this all of a sudden affects the budget of most of the politicians. In the United States, politicians depend on campaign contributors in order to get the money that they need, not only to buy television and media support for themselves, not only to support their staff, but also to pay the party to buy the membership on the key economic committees. The most notorious example of this, of course, is the military-industrial complex. Raytheon and the other arms makers give very substantial contributions to the senators and to the representatives that are on the armed forces committees, the military committees, the budget committees, and the general committees. So essentially, the politicians receive the campaign contributions, which are given to politicians who support the more spending on arms. And you could say the same thing for supporters of Wall Street, supporters of the real estate interests, right down the line. It's the lobbyists who are responsible for determining what politicians get elected in the first place, and when the politicians are elected, how much they can pay the party head, especially in the Democratic Party, to buy the chairmanship of a military committee or war committee or foreign affairs committee. Well, not only domestic contributors give money, but also foreign contributors. And the largest foreign contributor for many decades has been Israel. Not directly, but through AIPAC, the American Israel Political Action Committee. So I've been told by many American congressmen that they say take a very pro-Israeli policy and they receive money from AIPAC for their own contributions. So it's as if the politicians depend on their lobbying income from Israel to determine American foreign policy. It's a circular flow. Congress will give money, say, to Israel, and the Israeli committees will recycle this money to the campaign here. The Clintons were making generalizing this basic idea. They didn't have a campaign committee because they weren't in Congress. So Hillary Clinton set up the Clinton Foundation. She'd go to foreign governments and they'd say, here's the policy we want. She'd say, well, contribute to our foundation. They'd contribute to the foundation, and then she would come out with a policy favoring them. This model became the basis for the Ukrainian war funding. Again, President Biden didn't have a campaign fund, so he had to work with his son in setting up the network of international organization banks and bank accounts where the U.S. Congress would give money to Ukraine, and then Ukraine would recycle this money back to the U.S. Politicians, and especially to President Biden. So in effect, you have the President of the United States acting as a lobbyist for Ukraine and also for Israel and for any other country that contributes enough to their campaign. This is called privatization. The American economists believe that everything should be brought commodified and make part of the market. And so the Americans have made domestic economic policy, government spending, and international policy part of the marketplace. And when you think of it in terms of, who gets what, this is how you explain all of the money that's given to foreign countries. Well, it's obvious from the Republican stance that the gravy train of giving money to Ukraine and having it recycled into the congressional account is not going to work, that Ukraine's lost the war. There's not going to be much more money for Ukraine. But all of a sudden, you have the Israel situation complicating things. If the Republicans don't elect a Speaker of the House, and you need somebody to play a ceremonial role of the Speaker just to hit the gavel and officially open it. If they don't do that, then there's not going to be any government spending on the foreign countries that are recycled into congressional campaign contributions. And obviously, the congressmen all want to get paid by the lobbyists, by the countries or the industries that they're representing. Former President Trump wanted a Republican, he had a candidate that he wanted to be the Speaker of the House, who said, if I'm Speaker, we're absolutely not going to give money to Ukraine. But then over the weekend, after the fighting in Israel, he said, well, we do want to give money to Israel. And if you look at the contributions by AIPAC and other pro-Israel agencies to American Congress campaigns, then you're going to see that this is a big source of livelihood for the congressman. It's hard for people in other countries to realize the extent to which politics has been privatized and commodified in the United States. So the question in the United States now is, do they really need to open Congress again to give money to Israel? And President Biden says he has, $100 billion, I think, that he wants to give to Ukraine. He says, if we open Congress and we give money to Israel, then I want to give a lot of money to Ukraine. One last bit of money, and I don't know how much of this $100 billion is going to be recycled into President Biden's personal savings account and his son's savings account and his family's offshore holdings. And I don't know how much will go into the holdings of congressmen, but obviously this is the last chance for them to get a lot of money from the circular flow. You might think that's corrupt. But the Americans say, no, it's not corrupt if it's part of the marketplace. It's only corrupt if we don't know about the money coming in. But if it's all part of the marketplace, then it's okay for politicians to base American policy on what they get paid to do. That's how markets operate. This does not appear in most textbooks for supply and demand, but if you look at the policy making as supply and demand, that helps determine things.
南方为什么是南方？南方为什么是这个现状？我们到底将来会是一个什么样的发展方向？大家好，我是温铁军。我们准备了一个很重要的系列课程，统称为叫做南方世界观，希望大家适当的集中点精力，能够跟我们一起把这个5讲24节的课上下来。